Okay, today I was going to talk a little bit about PS 13.3, which was the FCA's policy paper on UCIS and close substitute investments. PS 13.3 was released in June this year. It was the follow-up to CP 1219, which was the initial consultation paper. PS 13.3 now is actually policy. And it pretty much implements everything that CP 1219 proposed. The only real exceptions are around EIS schemes, enterprise investment schemes, and VCTs, venture capital trusts. Those schemes have quite significant tax breaks. It felt that they were useful for all investors to be able to invest in these schemes, and at a time when smaller companies are struggling to find capital, it would have been a shame to choke off this source of capital for small and medium-sized enterprises. So they've been excluded, but everything else that was proposed has been caught by the new regulations. The only other exception, which is a bit of a grey area, is direct property investments. Now, many of these schemes claimed that they were never collectives and that they were never a UCIS in the old regime, and they may still claim that they're not a UCIS, a collective, in the new regime. It remains to be seen exactly how that's going to plan out. I've spoken to some experts, some regulatory lawyers, who think that they will still be classed as direct property investments, therefore not a collective, and therefore not captured by the new regulations. But I've spoken to other lawyers who have said if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it is a duck, and they think that these things are going to be classified as collectives and therefore will be subject to the new regulations. So what have the FCA actually restricted? They've restricted the promotion and sale of UCIS and close substitutes to anybody other than high net worth individuals or sophisticated investors. A high net worth individual is somebody who has more than £250,000 in investable assets, so not including the value of their home, or somebody who has an income of greater than £100,000 a year. A sophisticated investor would be a professional, somebody with a background and an experience in investments so that they could understand the nature of the risks that they were taking on by investing in a UCIS. Everybody else is considered to be a retail investor, and therefore the promotion and the sale of UCIS and close substitutes to retail investors has been banned. So that is essentially what the new regulations have brought in. So what exactly is a UCIS? Well, UCIS stands for Unregulated Collective Investment Scheme. And what that actually means is it's a collective investment scheme. We're pooling investors' money, but it's invested in an unregulated asset, often quite an illiquid asset like a property, sometimes something more esoteric, perhaps farmland overseas or something like that. The issue the FCA has is that often these schemes are illiquid. They have a high concentration in a very small number of assets. It's very difficult to exit the investments. There is no limitation on the amount of borrowing that takes place within the scheme, and the terms and conditions for investors are often quite complex and difficult to understand. And so for these reasons, it was felt that they are not suitable for ordinary retail investors. It is worth noting with a UCIS that although it is an unregulated collective investment scheme, a UCIS does have to be operated by a regulated firm. And if you are arranging investments or promoting a UCIS scheme, that activity is also regulated. So there is some regulation that exists in and around UCIS, despite the name Unregulated Collective Investment Scheme. Really, the much greyer area is schemes that sidestep the regulations and claim that they are not an unregulated collective investment scheme. They claim that they are a direct purchase of land or property or something similar, and because it's a direct purchase, it's not a financial instrument, it's not something that's regulated by the FCA in the same way that buying a house isn't regulated by the FCA, and therefore they're not going to be captured by the new regulations. They're going to claim that they're not a UCIS, they're not a close substitute, and that means that they can be operated by non-regulated firms and they can be sold and promoted by non-regulated individuals. And there are many people in the industry who feel that this grey area is really the danger area where we're still going to see some consumer detriment. It probably makes sense to try and define just exactly what the close substitutes are. It's UCIS, units in unregulated collective investment schemes, qualified investor schemes, traded life policy settlements, and securities that are issued by special purpose vehicles. All of those are financial instruments. They all come under FCA regulation and they're all captured by the new PS 13.3 regulations. So in conclusion, the new rules are going to come into effect on the 1st of January 2014. If you are a registered advisor, you're still free, if you have the appropriate training and appropriate permissions, you're still free to promote UCIS, but only to a very narrow band of the market, to high net worth individuals and to sophisticated investors. They're no longer deemed suitable for ordinary retail investors. Now, in a way that's a bit of a shame. There are some good UCIS schemes out there and they're now no longer going to be available for ordinary retail investors to invest in. But there were a number of high profile failures, a number of outright scams, and a number of quite poor investments out there, and it does make sense to protect retail investors from going into these kind of investments. So overall the rules make sense, but where they really fall down is on the grey area of the direct property investments. They are still not going to be captured by the new rules, or there may still be scope for them to sidestep the new rules, and that's an area that we'll have to watch very closely going forward. If that was interesting and you're keen to find out more about alternative investments, how they're regulated or what's happening in the market, then give us a call or check out our website.